Good morning, all of you. So, today, in continuation with the same history chapter, Rise of Nationalism in Europe, let's have a look at the Age of Revolutions, page number 13, the Age of Revolutions 1830 to 1848. Okay, now we have seen that after 1815, after the death of Napoleon, the conservative regimes they tried to strengthen their power, and during this time, liberalism and nationalism, this love for the nation and oneness, unity with the nation, now they came to be associated during this time with revolutions because people wanted their demands to be met, and so revolutions were the order of the day. And this happened in many regions of Europe, such as in Italy, Germany, some of the provinces of the Ottoman Empire, Ireland, and Poland. And so wherever these revolutions were held, now they were led by the liberal nationalists, and these people they belonged to the educated middle class, and among these were professors, school teachers, clerks, and members of the middle classes, commercial middle classes, engaged in trade and all that activity. Okay, now during this time, the first upheaval or the first sudden change, it took place in France in July in 1830. And what happened here? The Bourbon kings, the Bourbon dynasty, which has been restored to power during the conservative reaction or the conservative regime after 1850. If you remember the Treaty of Vienna, so after that the Bourbon kings they were restored to power in France, and now they were overthrown by these revolutionaries, and in place of absolute monarchy they installed a constitutional monarchy. Now constitutional monarchy is where you still have a monarch or a king to rule, but the powers of a monarch is they are controlled by a constitution. And so a constitutional monarchy with Louis Philippe, now it was established. And now Metternich he once remarked that when France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. Now what he meant was that whatever happens in France, the effects and repercussions of that are felt throughout Europe, and that is what happened. The July Revolution in France, now it sparked an uprising or a revolution in Brussels also, and this led to Belgium breaking away from the United Kingdom of the Netherlands. Then now one more event happened which mobilized or brought together the people with the nationalist view in mind. They brought all the educated people in Europe together. Now that was the Greek War of Independence. Now Greece, it had been a part of the Ottoman Empire since the 15th century. Now Ottoman Empire was somewhere where present Turkey is, so Turkey and its adjoining areas, and it was a huge empire, but it was a Muslim empire. And now this growth of revolutionary nationalism, now which has started in Europe, now it started a struggle for independence among the Greeks also, and this struggle for independence began in 1820 to 21. And so the people, the nationalists, those patriots, you can say, in Greece, they got support from the other Greeks also who were living in exile, and those who were living in other parts of Europe. So the nationalists in Greece they got support from the Greeks who were living elsewhere in Europe. And then many other people of Europe, now though they were not Greeks, but still they had sympathy for this ancient Greek culture. And because according to the poets and the artists, they thought, they praised and admired Greece as the cradle, means the framework of the whole European civilization. And so all those people, the elite Greeks who were living elsewhere in the parts of Europe, and some of the West Europeans also, then the nationalists in Greece, now they all got together, and they mobilized public support also, so that they can fight against a Muslim empire. And the English poet Lord Byron, now he also he's a very famous English poet. I don't know whether you have heard about Lord Byron or not. And now he organized funds, and he himself later went to the war, and there he died because of fever in 1822. And finally, through the Treaty of Constantinople in 1832, Greece was recognized as an independent nation. Now then we have the romantic imagination and the national feeling, means this feeling of nationalism, how it came into the hearts and minds of the people. And so we have seen that struggle for independence, they played a major role in bringing this feeling of nationalism among the people. But along with that, culture, history, this also played an important part in creating this idea of a nation. And so we have a culture, art, poetry, songs, music, so all this helped to bring about this feeling of nationalism and shape the feelings of the people. And so under this topic, I think all this is here. And is this particular portion clear, or should I do this also with you? I think this is clear. Should I move on? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the age of the revolution of the liberals, or straight away the unification of Britain? What do you want?
Ma'am, revolution of liberal.
Okay. All right. So the portion that we have not touched here, the hunger, hardship, and popular revolt. And so during that in that section, we have seen that the period of 1830s, now they were of great economic hardship in Europe. And because there was an enormous increase, huge increase in the population of throughout Europe. And then what happened as a result of this increase in population, now there were more seekers of job than employment opportunities available for the people. And then people from the rural areas, they also came to the cities, so in search of work, and they started to live in the overcrowded slums. And then the small producers of things, now they also faced a lot of competition from the machine made goods which were coming in from England. And that is what we have studied in industrialization also, the thing that happened in India also. And because industrialization, it came in England first, and so they already had factories and mills producing things, and at a cheaper rate also. And so now this was especially there in the textile production. And because England, they also already started this mechanization total, the cloth was produced, the textile was made in factories and mills. But in other places, what it was still carried out in homes or small workshops. And in the other parts, it was only partially mechanized. And so in those regions of Europe, where aristocracy, it still had power, peasants, they also struggle under the burden of the feudal dues. So where aristocracy was still there, where nobles, they had feudalism was still there, or feudalism, you can understand the way, just like the jagidari system and the zamindari system. And so there what happened, the people, they also had to pay so many dues to their lords. And then they also had to do so many obligations, like if they were asked to work on their fields or in their houses, then they had to do that, and they had to pay so many dues. So that was the condition of the people. And if then because prices of food grains, they also rose, because the demand was more, the supply was less. And so the prices of food grains, they also increased. And if there was a bad harvest in between, then it led to great poverty in town and country. And so the poor people, they also took participate in the revolutions and all that. And so during the time, the revolutions among the poor, the unemployed, and the starving peasants, and the workers, now that happened. Now during that time, parallel to that revolution only, a revolution was led by the educated middle classes also. And now whatever happened in February 1848 in France, now what we mean is that the monarch was removed from his place. And then in his place, a republic was formed. And that gave universal male suffrage. We are still not talking about universal adult franchise, but universal male suffrage. So all the males, they got the voting power. And So that means, what we mean to say is that when the peasants and the landless laborers and the workers, they were having a revolt, at the same time the educated classes, now they also were having a revolt. And so in other parts of Europe, where independent nation states, means still where independent nation states were not there, such as Germany, Italy, Poland, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, so men and women who belonged to the liberal middle classes, they combined their demands. They wanted that this system monarchy, it should be removed, and they should be ruled by a constitution, and there should be unification of their nation states. And now these people, yes, beta, Divanshi, you want to say something? All right, and these liberal revolutionaries, they took advantage of the growing anger and unrest among the people, so that they can further push their demands for the creation of a nation state, and a government which was based on the parliamentary principles. That what that means is that they should have a constitution, and people should have certain rights, like the freedom of expression, the freedom of press, freedom of association, coming together and forming associations and all that. And now so that was the state. And in the German regions, a large number, as a result, a large number of political associations, means groups, association is a group of people, so political associations, they were formed, and the members of these political associations were middle class professionals, businessmen, and prosperous artisans, those who were skilled. And so they came together in the city of Frankfurt, and they decided that they will vote for an all German National Assembly. So not only the peasants and the poor and the workers were revolting, but also the educated middle classes. Now they were also revolting, and so that is what happened in Germany also. So all these educated professionals, middle class people, they came together so that they can vote for an all German National Assembly. Then on 18th May 1848, the there were 831 elected people for this German Frankfurt Parliament, and so they marched in a procession, and they were having festivities, and so they very happily they went on to take their places in the Frankfurt Parliament. And this Frankfurt Parliament, it was organized or set up in the Church of St. Paul, and there they drafted a constitution for a German nation. And now what that would be, basically it was a constitutional monarchy also, that it would be headed by a monarch, and but still his powers would be subject to a parliament. And so when the deputies or the assistant of these Frankfurt Parliament, they offered the crowns to Frederick Wilhelm IV, who was the king of Prussia. Now he rejected it, and because he did not wanted his powers to be limited, and so he joined with other monarchs to oppose this elected assembly, or the Frankfurt Assembly, or the all German National Assembly. And so the aristocracy were against them, and military, they also were on the side of the aristocracy. So both of them together, quite strong. And so as a result, the basis or the strength of the parliament, the Frankfurt Parliament, it vanished, it got eroded. And one more thing was that the parliament, this Frankfurt Parliament, it was dominated, as we have seen, it was dominated by the middle classes. And so what these middle classes did, they resisted the demands of the workers and artisans, and so they lost the support of the lower sections of the people also. And in the end, what happened, troops were called in, and the assembly, it was forced to break up or end or disband. And now okay, so this much here. And then it is basically that what was the condition of women during this time. So though women, they had participated in the liberal movement, but in large numbers, but still they were not given any political power. And though they had founded their own political associations, founded newspapers also, and taken part in the meetings and demonstrations, but still, they were not given any position. They were denied the suffrage rights also. When this assembly was elected, this Frankfurt assembly was elected, so the women, they did not got the right to vote. And when this Frankfurt Parliament, it was convened in the Church of St. Paul, so women, they were only admitted there just as observers, and they had to stand in the visitors gallery. And now uh, conservative forces, they were able to suppress these movements and these revolutions by the liberals in 1848, but still they were not able to go back to the same old order. And the kings, the monarchs, now they began to realize that this cycle of a revolution, and then you repress it, and then again they will revolt, and again you suppress and repress a revolt. Now it could only end when they'll grant certain concessions to the these revolutionaries, or to the liberal nationalist revolutionaries. And so in the years after 1848, though these people were not able to bring about a complete change, but still the autocratic monarchies of Central and Eastern Europe, they began to introduce certain changes which has taken place in West Europe before 1815. So the changes which took place in West Europe before 1815, now they were taken in Central and Eastern Europe. And so the serfdom, that is same like feudalism and bonded labor, they were abolished in the Habsburg Empire and in Russia. And the Habsburg rulers, they also granted more autonomy or more freedom to the Hungarians in 1867. Okay, so now we come to the unification of Germany. You want me to do all these unifications or just Britain? Or should I do Germany, Italy, and Britain, all three? What do you want?
Ma'am, only Britain.
Yes. Fatima, what about you? Only Britain? Okay, what about the rest? Vinayak, Yashasvi, anything else? Or
Unification in Britain.
okay, Britain only. All
Ma'am,
right.
Britain.
Okay. So the strange case. Now while
Yes, ma'am.
okay, okay.
I have completed, and Britain is only left.
Okay, beta. So, as we have already done the unification of Germany and Italy, now the way in which Great Britain, it became a nation state, it is quite different. And the model of a nation, or how a nation state should be and how it is formed. Now, some scholars say that the model of a nation state is in reality Great Britain. And in Britain, this nation state, it was formed not because there was some sudden revolution, and it did not form just because of a revolution or a certain upheaval or a sudden change, but it formed because of a long drawn out process. Means it took really long years for the nation state of Britain to be formed. And before 18th century, there was no British nation as such. And the basic identities, or the original identities of the people who were living in the British Islands, they were the ethnic ones, means according to to which ethnicity they belong, such as there were some English people were there, and Welsh and Scot and Irish. And so these were different ethnic groups which were living in the British Islands. And all these ethnic groups, they had their own culture and they had their own political tradition. So all these people who were living in the different islands, they had their own culture and their own traditions. But with time, the English nation, the people who belong to the English ethnicity, now they grew more in wealth and in importance and power. With wealth, the power also comes. And so when they grew in wealth, they became more powerful and more important. And then they were able to expand their influence and over the other nationalities, those who were living in the other British islands. And now the English Parliament, they took control, or they took power from the monarchy at in 1688, and that was at the end of a protracted conflict. Now protracted conflict means a conflict which went on for a long time, lasting for a long time. So the English Parliament, it was able to get the power from the monarchy in 1688 after a very long time. And with that, a nation state with England at its center, it came to be made, or it came to be forged. Now the Act of Union, that was 1707, that was between England and Scotland. Now it resulted in the formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. Now what it meant in real terms was that England was now able to impose its influence on the Scottish people also, on the Scotland also. And so the British Parliament, because they were more powerful and they were more wealthy, they were more strong, so they had more number of members in the Parliament also. And so this British Parliament, though it had English and Scottish people also, but it was dominated by, more number of English people were there. And now when the British identity was growing, what that meant was that Scotland's own culture and their institutions, they were suppressed in a proper manner. And the Catholic people who were living in the Scottish mountains, Scottish highlands, now they had to suffer a terrible repression. Means whenever they wanted to attempt, or when they wanted to revolt for the independence, ask and demand for the independence, they had to suffer a terrible repression at the hand of the English people. And the Scottish Highlanders, the people of Scottish people who were living in the mountains, they were even forced not to talk or to speak in their native language, that is the Gaelic language, and they were even forbidden to wear their national dress. And those people who were not willing to do so, a large number of them were forcibly driven out of their own motherland. Now, so that was the case of Scotland. Now Ireland, it also suffered same fate. And now this Ireland was a country which was divided among the Catholics and the Protestants. Now both are the different sects of Christianity, so Catholics and Protestants. And the English people, they helped the Protestants, those who were living in Ireland, to establish their dominance over the Catholic people. Now in Ireland there were more number of Catholic people, but in England there were more number of basically it was a Protestant country, so they helped the minority, you could say, not exactly minority, but still they were less in numbers. So the people, the Protestants, to have influence, they helped them to inflict their influence over the or dominance over the largely Catholic country. And now Catholics, they revolted when they were suppressed and repressed by the Britishers. But even Wolfstone and his United Irishmen in 1798, they tried to revolt, but it was a failed revolt. And so finally Ireland was also defeated, and it was forcefully, it was incorporated or brought about to merge into the United Kingdom in 1801. So they failed in the revolt, and finally they were forced to be a part of the Great Britain or the United Kingdom in 1801. And so finally a new British nation, it was brought about, it was made. And this was done because now English, all the other cultures like the Scottish or the Irish, they were suppressed. And the British culture, now it was dominant there, the English culture was dominant there. And the symbol of the new Britain were the British flag, that is the Union Jack, the national anthem, God Save Our Noble King, and the English language. Now they were actively promoted, and all the older nations, or the older ethnic people who were living in the British Isles, now they became just subordinate partners in this whole union. So that is how Britain, it came to be a nation state. Okay, anything else in this chapter?
No, ma'am.
Okay.